All right, so how many people read out of control? 失控. How many people read what technology wants? And how many people heard of Calvin Kelly? Great, we have a big group of fans in the space. Calvin? Well, let's get you a mic. So, first of all, welcome to the Shenzhen Maker Fair.
It's my real joy and privilege to be here. I've wanted to come for many years, and now I'm here. Great.
First time in Shenzhen?
Not my first time in Shenzhen, but my first time at the Maker Fair in Shenzhen.
Cool. So, as this maker cultures, you come from the Whole Earth catalog, and a lot of people say this maker movement is a continuation of that. What's your take?
I think the Whole Earth catalog and Make magazine and the Maker Fairs and my own cool tools all tap into a very long tradition of making things yourself. And it wasn't begun in the Whole Earth catalog, but the Whole Earth catalog certainly propelled it along and helped advance it, and maybe articulated some ideas about it. So those many strands are running through the Northern California idea of trying to do as much as you can yourself as a type of self-education and self-empowerment, and using technology of any type to do it, whether it's a hammer, a saw, a 3D printer, a computer, or a beekeeper's hat. They're all the same kind of leveraging that we are interested in.
So anything you see particularly difference between the maker movement and the older DIYs and...
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the main difference is that in the 1960s and 1970s and later on in the 80s when the Whole Earth catalog was at its peak, I went back and looked at some of those earlier publications, and it's shocking how few tools are actually available. They're still there. You can still get the Aladdin kerosene lamp, which if you are going to light your house with electricity is still the best thing to use. But there was actually very few tools overall compared to what we have now. And we're living in an amazing age when you have all those old tools and you have so many new tools to do things that we could not have imagined before. And I think that's very exciting that you can print out a little part, you can have a little video screen this big, you can have sensors, accelerometers, pressure sensors. I mean, all these things that would have been very expensive and come unattainable, and now they're cheap. So there's a kind of a new power that we didn't have 40 years ago.
So as you say, it's the digital technology is driving this part of the new excitement about building stuff, whether that be on the open source, Arduinos, Raspberry Pi, all this board, or on the other side, the 3D printers and the laser cutters. All these are driven by digital technology. We know you write the books, What Technology Wants, and how would you see this is factored into that part of the metaphor?
a technology wants to be used in a certain sense, it's true that behind all these advances is the ultimate advance of Moore's law and computers becoming cheaper and faster and more powerful. And that sort of is the secret ingredient behind most of the things that we're seeing. Even if it's just to design something that is made in a traditional way or in a better way, we're using the computers based on Moore's law to do that. I think, well, here's something that I think is important to understand about the maker movement, is that the maker movement is never going to be the major way in which things are made. Most of the stuff in the world is still going to be made in large, mass-produced ways. What the maker movement and what it's about and how it ties into my writing is that it's another option. It's like we're constantly increasing the options that we have without deducting the old ways. And so what technology wants is to increase choice and possibilities, and what we have with the maker movement is another way to produce things, another thing in addition to the old. So 3D printing is not going to replace non-3D printing, okay? It's going to get better and better, and it's a new option, and there'll be more ways to use it and more kinds of 3D printing, which is really fantastic. But it's not going to displace the old kind. It's going to supplement or be in addition to. And that's what we get out of this, is we get more ways to make something. And it's not just going to break down to like you make 1 versus 1,000. It's going to be, there are things you can make with 3D printing that you cannot make in any other way. There are going to be things that you can make in industrial processes that you can't make in 3D printing. So what we are inventing here is new ways to make things that are going to add to the other ways we already have.
So right now there's a lot of people connecting to this maker process called this 0 to 1. And then through the crowdfunding, that's 1 to 1,000. And through after that, that's the 1,000 to, well, infinity. And how would you say this would fit into an ecosystem or life cycle as the organism, as the technology is broadened, its use, it's broadened the possibility of people who can create it?
Yeah. I think that's a helpful way to think about things right now. And actually, in fact, the hard middle in production of things, I'm not sure whether it's 1,000 or 10,000, but it's always been kind of easy to make one of. The 0 to 1 has actually always been with us. Making lots of things has kind of always been with us. It's that really that middle area where you want like a bunch, maybe 1,000, maybe 5,000, maybe hundreds. That has always been the place that we haven't had very many tools. And that, I think, is still the place, is still the frontier where a lot of work needs to be, a lot of innovation and a lot of opportunity lies, which is making a bunch of things, not like a gazillion, but a bunch. And there's a lot of Kickstarter campaigns, people who try to make something out of hardware, and they get tripped up because they get tripped up by their success. They know how to make one, and they figure they can probably make a couple hundred, and they go on a Kickstarter, and then sometimes they get like a lot of money, and suddenly they have to make 5,000 of them, and 5,000 of them kills them because it's so much more difficult to make 5,000 of something than it is to make 5 of them. And so that area is still a frontier, and I think that's where a lot of the opportunity is. The prototyping, making 1 or 2, I think we have a handle on that. I think it's the hard middle where you're making a bunch but not like a really lot, that there's so many opportunities for.
Yeah, I think one of the key hosts of the Maker Faire, C Studio, has been very active in looking into this. And also last year's, we had Foxconn in the Maker Faire talking about how they can reach out to solving this problem. I think there are a lot of, and this year with all the national policy, the Prime Minister visiting Makerspace, there are going to be more industrial resource coming and solving that. On top of that is the one thing the makers is doing is the openness, the open source. What would you say the kind of the relationship between open source and technology?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think in the long run, open trumps closed. I mean, generally there's a, I mean, it's not always true in the short end. There's ups and downs. Some things that are open don't work. Some things are closed. Apple, you know, work well. But I think in the long run, things that are open will triumph in the sense that I think an open system is the natural state. So the natural state for an idea, I think, is actually in the commons. It's not, we have a, particularly in America, we have a very, I think, warped sense of the natural home for an idea. We have this idea that the natural home is in somebody's head, they own it, and then when they think of it, and then it goes out and maybe they can get protected from it before everybody else steals it. That's sort of like, that's sort of the idea. But I don't think that's actually true. I think the natural home when ideas are, is that they are owned by everybody. It's very rare when a person has an idea only by themselves. Almost all ideas occur simultaneously to many people. So the idea is actually not yours. But the natural home for an idea is to be in the commons, to be shared. And then we have laws that give temporary monopolies to somebody to execute ideas. And then after some period of time, it's supposed to come back to the commons. So in fact, I think the commons, the openness, is the natural home for ideas and the natural home for innovation and the way things work. I think we might temporarily give some exclusive rights, monopolies to ideas in order to help them along, to protect them a little bit, but they will need to come back soon, back to the commons and to be open. And I think things that start open can have a huge advantage in the long term. So for me, I think there's a natural affinity to innovation and openness. I think the two of them are very, very linked. We see from science, which is generally has a bias towards openness. That's where most of our innovation still occurs. And I think if we can move and increase that sense of openness and sharing in the commons into the world of businesses and trying to innovate things in platforms, I think that's good for us, and we'll recognize over time that in the long term, an open attitude is better.
Great. One thing we have been looking at in the past couple of years toward the maker movement is the openness, is the sharing. And I started the think tank with Professor Sylvia Lender, who's in the audience, and Anna Greenspan. She couldn't make it. The Shanghai weather is just too bad. But as we starting to look at this openness and the maker movement, that's what brought us to Shenzhen. Because in Shenzhen, there's a past decades, there's a history of the ecosystem called the Sanzai Phone. They started as a copy of the Nokia of this, but very soon they began into a variation of their own. They started building up their own ecosystem, what we call the Gongban, which roughly translate into a public board, which is very much close to the open source board. It's also the other side of things called Gongmo, which is public case. People can just buy, and the entire system of about 60,000 companies, they all build this, and magically they fit together. This starting to creating the ecosystem here, enable people, if you want to build a phone, you only have to build the last 5%. And that becoming a huge mutation. Everybody here who has experience walking through the Huaqiangbei phone market, it's all kind of weird variation of phone. So back to this is something we see as the possibility of the huge random mutations of Things. So moving forward is we are looking at, every Internet of Things is hot. Everybody talks about it, nobody uses it, nobody wears them. But all the crazy number coming in terms of the 25, 50 billion Internet of Things in the next 5 years. So it looks like we are experiencing a period. It's going to be, using your biological metaphor, it's going to be a Cambrian explosion. First of all, would you what's your take on that number? 25, 50 billions more Internet of Things in the next 5 years.
My mind cannot process the difference between 25 billion and 250 billion. It's like, it's a big number. It's, I don't know what that means. It's like, oh, it's a big number. It's a big, impressive number. Okay, so we have big, impressive numbers, but I don't know. I don't know. It's a lot.
Yeah, a final reference, by the end of this year, it's about 5 billions.
Yeah, well,
and that kind of, everybody's excited about that huge growth. Yeah. And we're trying to find what would be the drivers for that kind of growth in terms of the reasons for technology wanting to, having this kind of growth in the next couple of years.
What the reason, the drivers are for the technology?
So what would be driving this? What would be the, do you see anything in today's society, whether that be technology, whether that be new technology, whether that be social movement, whether that be economic change? Because I think this is one thing is puzzling everybody. Everybody is excited about smart hardware, excited about this, but we don't see anything really interesting happening yet. But everybody's predicting the huge numbers.
Yeah, I would, I guess what would drive it? I think the question that I'm asking myself is your answer, and it's like, what would stop it? There's this, in the world of demographics, they talk about, demographics is like population, the number of children, deaths, births. They talk about demographic momentum. And it's very hard to change or bend the demographics because there's so much momentum. People don't die instantly, they take some time, and children take time. But I'm wondering if there's like technological momentum where it's like, even though there may not be a new force, it's just like, well, we're just going to throw away 1 billion or 2 billion ones and we need to replace them. It's, I don't know. I don't know, I'm not sure where the numbers come from, but I don't see anything in the immediate future that's stopping us from producing a lot more stuff and a lot more chips and a lot more hardware. So for me, I find it hard to see what's going to stop this.
Cool. So I think we're going to, would you like to take some questions from the audience?
Let's see. Yes, I have a question. I have a question. Well, am I going to ask them questions or they're going to ask me questions?
If you want to ask them questions.
I thought you were asking me whether I wanted to ask questions of them, which I do.
Sure. Go ahead.
That's why I was hesitating. I'm thinking, do I have any questions to ask? Yeah, I do have a question. So if you could raise your hand, how many people here have made something in the last year? How many people here have made something in the last year? Okay, so these are the makers. Okay. Okay. That's my questions, and then I'll open up questions. Okay.
All right. Anyone?
There was a, yes, gal right here.
David, just
Up.
thank you. Dear KK, I have two questions. What do you think about Internet Plus in China? And what's your point of view about Industry 4.0, especially in China?
I know what Internet Plus is. I don't know what the second.
In Industry 4.0 is full automation industry.
Is
Fully automated manufacturing.
fully manufacturing. Okay. I'm not sure. I still don't know what that means. There's a bunch of words, but I don't know what fully automated means. But so let me only. You asked I'll give you one answer, which is. I think there's different ways to think about Internet Plus. I've never seen any document or anything. I've only heard people talk about it. So from what I gather, listening to people talk about it, my explanation for Internet Plus is not the official one, but my explanation is that we tend to imagine that there is this world of the Internet. You know, it's virtual, digital, bits, and then we have the real world, the physical world, which is atoms and materials and heavy stuff, and that those two worlds are sort of different, and that we're going to take one world and add it to the other. That's the plus. But for me, I see this much more of a convergence where we take physical things and we embed the digital into each physical thing, and all processes, even the ones that make physics, are basically embedded with communications and intelligence. And so there's no differences of the world. It's just one world, all the physical things, but they have it's like a life force. They have an animated spirit of digital bits inside them. That, to me, is the vision of Internet Plus. It's sort of the world plus the internet. It's one thing. They converge. It's not like there's two things that you add together. And so that's my picture in my head. When people are talking about it, I'm thinking, yeah, we're going to add all the things that we make. And you can kind of see a lot of things out there. They will have a little tiny sensor in it and some chips and some communications, and it's like they'll be half alive in a certain sense. And AI, artificial intelligence, is coming on very, very fast. After 50 years of it's going to come, now it's coming, and we're going to be able to put in, an artificial intelligence into tiny things, and I think that to me is what Internet Plus should be. I don't know what it is, but that's what it should be.
So along that lines is recently there are people like Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking have been warning people about the dangers of the artificial intelligence. And I think your writings, your works is more on the benign side, the good sides of this technology. So what's your reasoning for AI will not be the evil want to eat every one of us?
Yeah, there are very smart people, as you mentioned, like Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking, who are worried, or who publicly worry about the computers and AI becoming so smart that they get us into trouble, or they do something that we cannot undo. And in a certain sense, if you're going to, I don't worry about technology very much, but the technologies that are worth worrying about are the technologies like genetics and roboticists and AI, where there's self-replication involved. So when you have something that's self-replicating, and if it begins to go in a certain direction, it becomes very hard to control it. And so it can veer out of your control very easily. And AI is one of those. But I have lots of reasons why I'm not worried about that. And maybe the best way to explain it is that your calculator. If you have a phone, you have a calculator on it. Your calculator is at least 100 times smarter than you are in arithmetic, okay? But you're not worried about that. That's because, well, it's a kind of intelligence that we're not very good at. You know, Mathematica on a computer is like 1,000,000 times smarter than us in statistics, and partly because our human brains are not very good, our human intelligence is not very good with statistics. So the kinds of intelligences, we tend to think of intelligence as a single dimension. And so you have a number on it, IQ, right? It's just one dimension, you know, and the slug is here, and the crocodile's here, and chimpanzees here, humans here, and Einstein's here. And so it's just like one long dimension. But that's completely wrong. Intelligence is many, many, many dimensions, and a better way to say it is that there's many species of intelligences, okay? And the particular mix of intelligences that are in humans, we think of ourselves as a general purpose intelligence. Well, they're really, it's general purpose of a type, but we're going to discover as we make artificial intelligences that we actually have a very specific kind of intelligence. We don't have anything to compare it to very much, so we don't know what that is. But what we're going to do with AI is make many new kinds of intelligences, many new types. And some of those types will be superior to certain things that we do. Others will be lacking that. And so when we make AI really, really smart, we're going to make it smart in different directions. So it's going to be basically an alien intelligence. So the best way to think of AI is to think of it as an alien intelligence, because it's going to think different. And that turns out to be the main value of AI, is because it thinks different. And we actually don't want the AIs to think like humans. We want them to think differently. The reason why we're going to have robot-driven cars is because they're not driving like humans. They're going to drive like a robot. They're going to drive inhumanely. They're going to drive without distraction. So when we make AIs really smart, we're making new alien intelligences, and they aren't going to necessarily try to displace us. We're going to have an ecology of intelligences, and we're going to make those machines think differently, because that's the value. It's like the Apple ad, think different. That's where the creativity comes from. We're going to make different kinds of intelligences so that we can figure out problems that the human kind of intelligence alone cannot solve. So we will work together with those different kinds of intelligences to solve problems. Okay, so that's my vision. The reason why, even though they become really, really, really smart, is that they're smart in different dimensions that we actually want to have them smart.
Great answers. Okay. Love it. So you speak of replications, and one of the hardest trend of technology is also coming from synthetic biologies. Yeah. So actually, well, just a little bit advertising for this Maker Faire. On the 21st, we are going to have a DIY bio panel. Okay. So we'd love to hear your takes on this biological side of things.
Yeah. Let's see. I think the biological hacking, the biohacking is going to go a little slower than the silicon hacking. So while there's been great strides, CRISPR is this new technology that can do amazing things. There's other technologies that will reach down to the level of a do-it-yourself. But biology is just so complex that I think it's still going to be a while before we really have a complete revolution of the nature that we had with personal computers. It'll come, but it'll come much slower. I mean, the problem with biology is it takes, like if you write some code, you can compile it and then try it. If you hack some biology, some cells, you still have to Let them grow at their own rate. I mean, there's biological time involved. And so we don't have quite the patience for that. It takes a different kind of thinking to kind of hack in. And so I think it's going to be 10 years, 20 years more before we see really unleashed that kind of amateur level tools.
One.
So
I have also a question here on the left side. I have not listened for all the time, but it's what I think is predominantly you talk about the positive side of technology, right? How beautiful it is, how cute it is, how we need it, how we can't live without it. And let's see the fact, what it's all about. I mean, the technology, software, hardware, nowhere, is killing us since ever it had been invented. And it's fine to talk nicely about chocolate and how beautiful it is. But I wonder, we know basically it's made from military interests. The internet is based on military interest. The artificial intelligence, the first one who will use this to guide bombs so clever that you die, yeah, is the military. Nobody else needs artificial intelligence. We, the human race, is intelligent enough. Yeah? We just have to face that since several decades, we are destroying ourselves. And that's it.
Oh, thank you. I think every technology that we make from beginning of time, as you said, can be weaponized. There's nothing that we have invented that you cannot find a way to make a weapon out of it. But every technology that we invent can also be peacified. There's nothing we've invented that we haven't been able to find a good use for. So the question is, which one wins? Is it the good side or is it the bad side? Which one is more powerful over the long term? And the answer is that I think if the net gain over time is that we have increased choices. We have increased choices. You can take the hammer to kill someone, or you can use it to make a house. But the interesting thing is that we now have a choice to make that we didn't have before. AI gives us a new choice that we didn't have before. We didn't ever have the choice about whether to use it for good or for ill before, because it didn't exist. Now we have a new choice to make. That choice itself is good. That's what we gain from technology, is we have increased choices, increased possibilities. We still have to make those decisions, but we have more choices than we ever had before. That's what we gain from technology.
So we have for more question.
Okay.
Yeah, please. If you look at many maker products, many of them are greener than mass production. Many of them are more sustainable. Many of them are, much easier replaceable than mass production. Do you see any way or any kind of market where maker products can really challenge mass production?
Do I see any way where maker products can what?
Challenge
mass production, I see. I don't, as I said before, I don't see any way that in general it will replace mass production. I think there may be certain things, certain particulars that we would want to have produced in a small scale or a personalized way. There may be some of our clothes we may want to do that way. Other clothes, like a t-shirt, we may just want to buy the mass produced. I think, I don't see a way, maybe other people more imaginative can imagine, but I don't see a way where mass production goes away and you have only 3D printers in everybody's bedroom. I mean, 3D printers look very small and nice, but when you start to pile up all the materials that they need to produce everything you need, you still have 55-gallon barrels of chemicals. You can put it in your bedroom? I don't think so. So I think it's an option, a preferred option, a good option for certain things, but I don't really see it replacing mass production overall.
Great. I guess you want sometimes to look around and enjoy the Maker Faire.
Yes, I do. I'm really delighted to be here, and I actually haven't had a chance to see the fair itself, so I'm going to head out now and see more of it. I saw just a little bit coming in. But I appreciate your attention sitting here, and thanks for having me and inviting me.
Thank you so much for
Great.
coming.
Okay.
Great.